Hello and welcome to my today's video, in which I'm going to speak about one of the most difficult topics probably in the spiritual path of any person, which is the shadow work. And I'm going to use the example of one of the specialists in shadow work that are in K-pop, and that is Min Yoongi. I actually, there is a certain history to how this video came together, and it is pretty long. It starts over a year ago, like over 1.5 years ago, when in the movies, in the cinema, there was a movie of Yoongi, the D-Day. I still remember I didn't get a chance to be at the actual concert, so I went to the cinema. And I remember the very beginning of the concert, when he just comes on stage, and I feel as if I'm being, as if some energy presses me into the chair. This is the feeling that I got. And I was sitting for the first maybe 3 songs, I was sitting like this with my mouth open, not understanding what is happening to me. Why, what is this power? Where does it come from? Why do I feel so... Why does he feel so powerful? Where does it come from? And the more I was getting more and more acquainted with his work, the more I was listening to him, the more I was watching him, the more I was going through my own life challenges. I more and more realized that the reason why his energy feels this powerful, or maybe one of the reasons why his energy feels this powerful, is his integrity, which comes from the fact that he is very acquainted with different parts of himself, including his shadow. And I realized that because of the topics that he uncovers in his work, in his music. Confirmation. And I lost a thought. Can you imagine what I was saying? What was I saying? What is shadow? Yeah. So according to Jung, shadow is the aspects of us that we don't want to identify with. That basically, according to Jung generally, there is the structure of the psychic of the person is not coherent. There is this ego, the part that we identify as, and also there is a shadow, a part that we do not identify as. There is also a self, which is our true nature. But that's a topic for another video. And the shadow is a part of our personality that we do not want to identify as, but it still carries certain strength, because every part of us carries certain strength. And the shadow has the energetic charge that makes us sometimes act the way that we don't want to act. Because, if we are not whole, if we don't accept the parts of us that we consider to be our shadow, that we don't consider them to be our shadow, we just do not want to look at them. For example, it can be our anger, it can be our trauma, it can be our certain particularities of our character that we don't want to identify with. They have power over us, because as long as we don't want to look at them, as long as we don't want to master them, as long as we don't want to make them the part of us, they earn the strength, earn the energy, and break through the wall of consciousness to sometimes, in the situations when our level of consciousness reduces because of stress, because of tiredness, because of the unexpected situation, because of a situation of a crisis, they come up and they make us act certain way, the way we consciously would never do. When people lose their temper completely and the anger breaks through, or when in a situation when someone needs to make a decision, they become completely undecisive and they just freeze. Or in the situations when people gain some power, and together with this power they become very inadequate. That's also the process when the shadow takes its place, takes its part in the life of us. Because all of the parts of us which are inherited, which we have inside of us, they have their share of energy. And this energy, one way or another, will be fulfilled. So the goal with the shadow is to look at what it is and integrate it as an irreplaceable part of us. If it is anger, we need to find the contact with anger and find the way to make it work for us, make it serve ourself, our true nature. If it is okay, let's not like this. Why I spoke about Yoongi? Because Yoongi in his music has uncovered the topic of shadow in many different tracks. I have chosen 3 or 4 of them to speak about, and they, in my opinion, show different aspects of the shadow. And the first one that I'm going to speak about is actually Interlude Shadow. It is one of the fundamental works on shadow generally in the whole BTS discography and in the work of Min Yoongi, as it seems to me. And Interlude Shadow, it actually shows a couple of aspects of shadow which are universal. One of them being, when he says this verse, I want to be rich, I want to be the king, I got a big dream. This verse shows to me the fact that actually there is nothing wrong in the shadow. That in this verse he says, I want to be rich. That's a very normal desire for a human to be rich. I want to be the king, meaning I want to mean something, I want to be meaningful. I have a big dream. There's nothing wrong in having big dreams, right? At the end. But because society cultivates mediocrity, because in the society, in the way we are brought up, it is more natural to pretend that you are like others rather than to say, I have big dreams, I want to be meaningful, I want to achieve, I want to make money, I want to be rich, I want to be the king. Because of that, our natural desire for greatness, our natural desire for abundance, our natural desire for meaningfulness and for, playing an important role in the society goes into the shadow and becomes a part of us which seems wrong to have, which definitely not. And in the shadow, when it's not conscious, when I don't say, okay, I want to be rich, I'll find the ways to be rich. Or I want to be meaningful, I will find the way to serve to the society so that I become meaningful for the society, I become a meaningful member of it. When I don't say, I want a big dream, and therefore I will try my best to achieve it. When I put all of these desires into the shadow, and I try to live as if they do not exist, in this shadow, these desires gain weird features and become an actual monsters. I become greedy, I become narcissistic, I become obsessed, because I don't create direct relationships with my desires. I put them into the shadow because of the way I am conditioned, because of the way the society tells me that I shouldn't stand out, that I should, be like others, be mediocre. So this is one aspect of the shadow. Shadow does not mean something bad. Shadow means something suppressed, something that may be a very natural desire, like, for example, lust. Lust is suppressed sexual drive. Sexual drive is very natural for people, but because of a number of different reasons, including the society conditioning, it is often suppressed. And when it is suppressed, it grows and gains the form of something very weird, very perverted, very distorted. But there is genuinely nothing wrong with the sexual drive. There is nothing wrong with, wanting to express yourself. But because social conditioning says that you shouldn't express yourself, that it should be like others, it grows into the forms of, weird behavior just to gain attention. Because in this shadow, all of these things, very normal and natural, become monsters. And this is one of the things that I want all of us to understand about shadow. Another thing that Yoongi sings, that Yoongi says in this song, which is also very important about the nature of shadow, is when I grow, the shadow grows with me. And that is actually true, because basically when you grow, when you, like, what do we mean when we say a person grows? A person increases their scale, they expand. Meaning they expand the energy that they have. And with the expansion of energy, they expand their influence, for example. They expand their abilities to cooperate, abilities to change something in the world, and so on and so on. So basically, growth means expansion of the energy. And when the person expands, all parts of this person expand. The ego expands, the self expands, the shadow expands as well. There are very a lot of situations when people gain some power and they become corrupted. Like when we looked at them, like corrupted in different ways. I don't mean just the politics or something like this, even though in politics it is very common as well. But it's also, about the musicians who become famous and then they turn out to be evil. They start to engage in different activities which are not all right, including drugs and alcoholism and all of these things. Or when in spiritual teachers, it is actually also very common when the spiritual teacher gains some power, gains some force, and he becomes and he starts to abuse this power to gain more money or to sexually abuse someone. That's so common among spiritual leaders that you can't even imagine. So this is what happens. If the shadow is unintegrated, and for example, in the case of a spiritual teacher, the spiritual teachers, a lot of them say, I'm pure. I don't relate to sex, something like this. And when they grow, when their power expands, the part that is suppressed expands too, and it grows into the behaviors which are very unbeneficial for everybody, including this person. So this might be one of the reasons why people do not expand. Because if there is something in the shadow that will turn you into a monster when you grow it, then your subconscious will be protecting you from it. And it will be protecting you from actually growing, from actually expanding your energy. Because it doesn't want you to give the energy to this monster that is in your shadow. And sometimes, in many cases, the gateway for growth is integration of the shadow. Because this way, instead of being something that takes your power, your shadow becomes your power. It becomes something that protects you. It becomes something that makes you whole, gives you integrity. So this is the second aspect that is beautifully shown in this song, Interlude Shadow. And the third one, I would say, it is actually represented in a drop at the end of the song. There is this moment where Yoongi says, I want to be the king, I want to be rich, I want to be blah, 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 all of these words at the same time. And it sounds like the song is finishing. And it sounds like when I was first listening to it, it felt to me like he found peace with his shadow. He speaks about the shadow, how it is difficult to deal with and blah, 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 blah. And at some point he finds peace with shadow. Okay, I want to be rich, I want to be the king. And then this drop happens, and there is another verse with very aggressive form. I will maybe put it somewhere in the video, maybe not, maybe you understand, maybe I will put a time code of where it happens in the song. I will probably put it in the video. Okay. This is the moment that shows to me that it's kind of difficult to accept as well, but the fact that shadow is actually endless, it doesn't have a bottom. Shadow will come to unless you become enlightened, which is very rare thing, and I'm not sure if it will happen to us in these lifetimes. Shadow has many different layers. Sometimes you feel like you have already integrated the shadow, but when the situation comes and you act weird to yourself, you're like, okay, why did I do it like this? And you find another layer of this shadow. Maybe sometimes the same shadow that you thought you have already overcome. So this shows to me, and I know it from my own experience as well, that shadow is actually, it's not like you integrate shadow once and you are free from it forever. Integration of the shadow is a process for the whole life, unless you enlighten, which is rare. So for me, it's the understanding that I need to be attentive to how I act, what I say, and what I think all the time. Because the fact that I have worked on integrating my shadow for years, the fact that I have integrated a huge share of my shadow, still doesn't mean that I'm free from shadow. It will never mean that I'm free from shadow. I still need to be very attentive to myself. I still need to be very attentive to what I'm hiding, to what I'm trying to hide from myself on the first part, and to continue this process of integration over and over and over again. To not think that I am invincible, to not think that I am perfect. If I have done this work, I have done a big share of this work, like a lot of shit actually, but still, I still have a shadow, and I will always have it. So this is the process for the whole life: uncovering, unlayering, and integrating. Another very important zone about shadow is amygdala. Oh my god, I can't see it. Whenever I make a video about Yoongi, it hurts so much. I'm good. So, another important zone about shadow is amygdala. Amygdala is a zone about trauma. And trauma is very, very, very often stored in the shadow of us, because we send into the shadow the parts of us, the parts of our experience that we cannot integrate in the moment when it happens to us. And trauma is usually, like, what is a traumatic event? A traumatic event is an event to which our subconscious reacts with, like our nervous system reacts with a collapse. So basically it's a kind of a situation in which we don't know what to do. Like, we don't know how to react. We don't know how to put this experience into our lifeline. How to make it a part of our story. Whatever it is, actually, it can be very different things. There is a really cool book. It's very hard to read, honestly, but it is very, very, fundamental. It is called Body Keeps the Score, and it's about trauma and recovery from trauma, basically trauma and healing from the physiological point of view. It actually also mentions the amygdala itself, and the whole system, the whole mechanism around trauma in our nervous system, in our brain. And amygdala is basically a part of our brain, like a gland, which, metaphorically, stores the memories of certain situations that have been traumatic for us. And in case the situation reminds us of this situation that traumatized us in the past, amygdala releases the warning: it is dangerous, it is dangerous, it is dangerous. And that's why when we have this traumatic response to certain situations, we can react in the ways which are not adequate to the situation. So we get triggered by something and we react in the way that does not correspond with the seriousness of the situation. Basically, this is what they call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. When we react to the situations not according to what they actually are. And it happens because there is a part of our experience which for us is not clear, which we do not understand. And that's why we put it into the shadow. And the whole zone, amygdala, is about finding such experiences in your past, bringing them to the surface, and finding a place for them in your life. It has such a strong therapeutic effect, because I know at least two people, me and my friend, who had certain traumas uncovered because of the song Amygdala. I remember the first time I watched the music video, I saw the cover of the music video, the thumbnail. I still remember it. It's Yoongi holding the knife to his eye, in front of his eye, like making this scar on him. And I remember I saw it and I'm like, this is going to hurt me so bad. I turned it on, I watched it. It finished. I turned the phone off, I put it aside, and I went on with my day as if nothing happened. I was like, I'm not fucking ready for this. And then I remember that day I went to bed, I closed my eyes, and a ton of traumatic experiences, from tiny to huge, fell onto me, into my consciousness. And I don't remember what I did further, but I think like what I did further was like integrating them one by one. And my friend actually had a similar experience, not like that, but somewhat similar experience. This is basically what you do with traumatic experiences that are stored in your subconscious. You bring them back, you look at them until they make sense. Sometimes it's very hard. Sometimes it's almost impossible. Sometimes, most of the time, you need support for that. And I really recommend to not integrate the shadow, basically the trauma, on your own. I recommend to have some support, like therapist, healer, whatever. Have someone who will support you in this process. But generally, this is how it's done. And it's interesting that Yoongi, in this song, he mentions as one of the traumatic experiences the surgery that his mom had on her heart in the month when he was born. Because the traumatic experiences come from different places, and some of them we experience when we are still not able to even remember them. In my tradition, for example, in my yogic tradition, there is a thing called rebirthing. Rebirthing is the spiritual practice which allows you to come back to the moment when you were born and live again this moment, to erase the trauma of this process. Because very often we get traumatized already in the moment when we are born. Sometimes we are traumatized in the first year of life, or in the first 3 years of life, especially the first year of life. For example, when Yoongi says about his mom having a heart surgery, it basically means like the first year, especially the first 40 days of life for a child, are the moments when the child needs mom the most. And imagine if, I don't want to be too invasive actually, but okay, I will tell it. I have a very similar experience actually, not with the heart surgery, but with something like that. When in the first year of my life, I didn't get to be with my mom a lot. So in this time, if mom is not available for a child feels very abandoned. So the fact that Yoongi mentions this experience that he doesn't even remember in this song about trauma shows that he understands, and that's actually the truth, that some trauma comes from the time that we don't even remember, the time that we don't even know how to integrate. But we still need to integrate it, because otherwise it creates certain narratives, it creates certain situations, it creates certain things themes in our life which we don't know how to get out of. And this feeling of like very first abandonment, when you're still non-verbal and you still fully depend on your parents who are not there. It is a very fundamental experience that later creates a lot of traits of the character. That's why basically probably I recognize a lot of very similar things in Yoongi to me. But that's another story. Okay, it's getting progressively more painful to make this video. I knew it. I knew it's gonna be like this. So okay, we spoke about trauma. We spoke about shadow generally. There is another level of shadow, which is the collective shadow. And this thing Yoongi mentions in Hagam and in Polar Night, in some other songs as well, but these ones are the ones that I'm going to speak about. And while Hagam, to some extent, is actually the conversation about shadow, the society generally, like more generally than just particular society. Because he speaks about like how we take away our own freedom by being the slaves to capitalism, by being the slaves to YouTube, by being the slaves to flexing. And basically the things that he mentions are the forms of social conditioning which we fold to. But because we don't realize that we have this conditioning, because we don't realize that we have this conditioning of, spending our time with the constant influx of information, it doesn't even allow us to have any freedom of thought. Because we do not realize that we follow the things and desire the things which deep inside we don't really need, but they are imposed on us by capitalism, by overproduction and overconsumption and marketing. Because we don't realize that we are eager to get some things and we spend tons of energy on the things which we don't really want, but we are still trying to get them because we want to show off, because we want to flex that we have these things. This is actually a form of shadow as well. A form of like the conditioning, the things which motivate us, but not in a right way. The things which dictate our behavior without us actually realizing why we do the things that we do. So this is one part of the shadow. Another part of the shadow is, he mentions it in Hagam, is the freedom of speech. And he says, what if your freedom of speech is the cause to someone's death? Are you still supposed to have this freedom of speech? And this is the relation to the shadow, especially powerful in the Korean society, but actually everywhere around the world, where people feel that they have the right to bully, to cancel other people because they feel like they are right. But in fact, deep inside, they do it just because they want to feel this power over someone. Because in their day-to-day life, they feel powerless. And it is somewhere in their shadow. They feel powerless, they feel mediocre. And so whenever someone gets to some extent of something, to some extent of power, to some extent of expression, they bully this person and they cancel this person, even if this person didn't do anything actually wrong, not because they want the world to be a better place, but just because they want to feel their strength, their power over someone powerful. And this is another part of the social, like societal, I don't know if there is such a word, shadow. But also, actually, like different cultures and different societies and different countries have their own shadow. And it is unique for every particular environment. For example, in my country, we have shadow. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I know the shadow of my country. I'm just not going to say it. But you know, you can say it like it's usually, you can usually see it from the side, but the people inside of the country don't usually perceive it because it's in the shadow. Like some countries are, you know, lazy and unable to concentrate. Some countries oppositely are unable to relax. Some countries are too passive. Some countries are too aggressive. Some countries are, you know, too locked in. And so on and so on. And a lot of countries have their collective trauma connected with some war, some genocide, some lack of liberty, and so on and so on. So there is this aspect of trauma, of shadow as well. And, you know, there are not every person has to go through all of these levels of shadow. For most of the people, it is enough to just understand your own shadow, like your own features, your own traits, your own maybe traumas. It doesn't mean that you have to go through all of these levels, like one by one. But for some people, like me, for example, I have to go through all this shit. And I feel like Yoongi is this kind of a person as well. We have to go through all of these layers of this shadow, and to, you know, put it up and integrate it. So if you are this kind of a person, this video might be useful for you as well. In Polar Night, Yoongi actually mentions something that is the most difficult to catch kind of shadow, and it is the scene of ignorance. When people, he says, between all these many truths and all these many lies, are we seeing the world the right way? And this whole song, to me, like, it seems to me that he says we perceive the world in the way we want to perceive it, in the way that is beneficial for us, for ourselves. So we are not looking for the truth, we are looking for a way to be right. And this is actually the shadow of ignorance. This is what ignorance means. When you think you are right, but you are not looking for the ways to prove to yourself that you are right, to challenge your beliefs, to challenge your ways. And if you don't do it, you are stuck in the illusion. And the actual reality for you is in the shadow. So this is another kind of shadow. That when you put the way the world is into the shadow, because you want to believe that the world is different from what it actually is. This is another type of shadow. But also in this song, Yoongi says one of the most important things about shadow work. He says, it is so dirty, but am I clean? And this is actually a turning point for opening up the shadow work generally, because as I have already mentioned, shadow is usually the part of us that we do not perceive, that we do not see about ourselves. But because it still has the energy, it manifests in either projection or the situations when we do something that we would never do consciously. We burst, or we do something that we would never want to do. Or we later, you may think, shit, why did I do it this way? Why did I say what I said? Why did I do it this way? I don't understand. And these are the situations in which we need to be very careful and very, very attentive and very, very reflective. Of course, sometimes we all do the things that we didn't mean to do, but we do these things because there is something that is hidden inside of us that motivates our behavior in this particular moment. So when you do something like really bad, don't say I had, like, it's my way of doing it. I don't say I had the right to do it. I'm like, okay, for some reason I did it, and it's okay that I did it because apparently it was somewhere in my shadow, but why did I do it? What does it say about me? What is it something about me that I do not see still, that I still do not perceive? And how do I integrate it? How do I see it? How do I realize it? But even more importantly, there is this most difficult aspect of the shadow, which manifests in a form of projection. When we really are irritated by something in another person, when we really hate something in another person, or hate something in the society, what we actually need to do is ask ourselves, but am I clear? Am I clean? Because if I was clean, I wouldn't react this way. I wouldn't have this hate. I wouldn't have this irritation, because I wouldn't have the energy for this. I wouldn't resonate with this. And sometimes this particular trick, this particular key made me realize the things about myself which I would never want to realize. When I see something in another person and I hate it, I am irritated by it, but then I stop myself and I say, okay, but what does it say about me? What is it in me that I don't accept that makes me react to this person like this? And I would uncover the shit that I would never want to uncover. But of course, it's very important to uncover it. And this is like the aspect of the shadow, which is very important, and Yoongi says about it. It is so dirty, but am I clean? It is so dirty, but are you clean? Okay, honestly, I need to finish this video already because I'm about to faint. For God's sake, why does it have to be so difficult? To sum up, oh no, shit, I need to say another thing. So, except for the shadow of the collective shadow, the shadow of the country, the personal shadow, the trauma, there is a layer of shadow which is it is not accessible for a lot of people. So don't be scared. Maybe you will not need to deal with it. I have to deal with it because I'm this kind of a person. There is an aspect of shadow which is connected with the shadow of the previous lives. In my tradition, in my yogic tradition, we consider, and in the yogic traditions generally, we consider that the soul, when it travels from one life to another, it is surrounded with something that holds the soul together, that holds the soul separated, and it is called the subtle body. And in this subtle body, the experience from the previous lives is stored. So sometimes when I work with myself, or when I work with like some clients, I see that there is some trauma that did not happen in this life, that is much bigger than something that could happen in this life to like a 20-year-old girl, for example. So we realize in such a case that this is a trauma from some previous life, and sometimes some people need to integrate this shit as well. And also there is another thing which is connected with previous lives, but not with your previous life. And it is the shadow connected with the lineage, with the family. Because we carry in our genes and in our energy the trauma of the previous generations, as well as we carry the strength of the previous generations. But as long as the trauma is not resolved, the strength is not accessible. So some people also need to deal with the trauma of generations, the generational trauma of your lineage. I'm not going to speak about how to do that in this video because it will be very specific and it is not needed for most of the people, but maybe if there is a request for that, I can maybe speak about it in some other video in my different blog, not the one connected to K-pop. And now I've said everything that I needed to say. That was like, sometimes I make some videos and I'm like, I feel like I would rather, carry some weights for 8 hours or like do something like this because it's so draining. But it was worth it. I have been meaning to make this video for many months, and I finally did it, and it feels great. And if I check the video and the sound is fucked up, I will kill myself. No, I'm not gonna kill. Of course, I'm not gonna kill myself. I will be very upset. I hope everything is alright with this video. 40 minutes is gonna be less when I edit it. But again, 40 minutes video. I have another 40 minutes video about Yoongi, about trauma and healing. You can watch it as well. It's kind of fun. Okay, whatever. Shit. See you next time. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you didn't. Hope it wasn't as bad for you as it was for me.